Welcome. My name is Milan Higginbotham. I am part of the recruiting function here at DataStax, and I help manage all of our campus relationships. I'd like to thank Task for helping us set this up and for giving us a chance to present in front of all you guys. Before we do get started, I did want to mention that we will be monitoring the DataStax Discord channel under the sponsors tab. So feel free to add any of your questions and we'll make sure to get to them before today's talk ends. So today I did want to introduce you to Chelsea Navo. So Chelsea started her career as a software engineering intern for a small startup in Atlanta. Chelsea earned her BS in computer science from Georgia Tech, and over the last 20 years has led talented engineering teams to create some amazing things. She helped create software that CDC uses to fight outbreaks. She's done work for the US government around national security use cases. And now she's helping some of the biggest corporations modernize their systems to support new customer experiences. Chelsea has also run internship programs for a few companies and has interviewed hundreds of intern candidates. Her experience as a hiring manager and an internship program manager she will share today. And she's also participated in a lot of hackathons and will share her thoughts about how hackathon innovations can really power technical careers. She is an open data geek and lives in Atlanta with her husband and daughter. With that said, I give you Chelsea.
Awesome. Thank you, Milan. All right, can everybody see my screen all right? All right.
Yes.
Let's go. So thank you for having me today. We'll have a simple agenda to walk through. First, we'll talk about the next 20 years. What does 2040 look like? How will all y'all be able to build? And I'm from Atlanta, so I will say y'all during this presentation. We'll dive into internships, and I'll share a little bit more around the things I've learned and the things that I've seen be super successful. I'll talk about hackathon innovations and how you can use these to create opportunities for your technical career. And one of the things I'll start off with is I had a boss a couple of years ago, and he taught me this bottom line up front concept. And the idea when you give a presentation and you're talking to somebody, get right to the point. And so here, putting the key takeaways up front. I want to make sure if you take nothing else away from this talk today, that you take away these three pieces. First, in internships, you'll grow a lot and you'll learn a lot, but you also teach a lot. And that's also something that is typically surprising for a lot of folks. The second one here is use hackathons to create new opportunities for you. Don't just see it as a moment in time and then it's gone. Be able to use this to help get your technical career going. And then probably the most important thing is keep moving, never stand still in your career, always be learning, always be working with meeting new people and creating great things. So with that, let's dive into the future, 2040. What is 2040 gonna look like? The day-to-day life is gonna be really different than what 2021 looks like. There's gonna be advances in data and devices, and those are gonna power entirely new experiences for everybody. But where will you be in your tech career, right? And so think about, whether you want to start your own company, whether you want to be the most senior engineer at a firm, whether you want to be a VP leading a big organization, driving big change. There's a lot of different career paths you can take with tech, and it's really, really delightful, but it's also kind of overwhelming at first. I know when I started my career out, I said, well, I'm getting a computing degree because I want to get a good salary. But what I want to do with it, I don't know. Like, it's just really cool to be able to create some code and be able to help a small business grow, right? Or be able to engage and make somebody's life a little easier. And so, as you're looking at this weekend and you're building cool things to show off, think about, how do you take this forward? Like, what are you going to learn this weekend that you're going to dive into a little bit more and be able to develop this over the next few years? When we think about the future, and we think about how, automate all the things is a very popular thing that's happening, but it has been happening over time. And I love this quote, and I don't typically read from some slides, but civilization advances by extending the number of important operations in which we can perform without thinking about them. And so I love this because if you think about what you want to spend your day doing, right? You want to spend your day doing interesting things. You don't want to spend your day doing tedious things. So automating all those tedious things and the behind the scenes things so that you can maximize your time to do things that are more engaging, more thought-provoking, more interesting to you, is super important. And when we do that together as a team and as a society, that's where we start moving, the day-to-day life shifts from one year to the next, from one decade to the next. And so a little context here around just data growing, right? The pattern of data growing has continued over many, many, many years. But now it's continuing to grow exponentially around structured data in particular. And so here, when you think about this, this isn't just the data that's being stored, but it's all the telemetry, it's all the exhaust that's coming off of these systems. And it's causing two big problems out there in the world today. The first one is you get all this telemetry and all this extra, what I call exhaust data from these systems, and it becomes too unwieldy to try and get insights from simply, right? And so there's innovation opportunities here around operational analytics, around advanced statistics, AI and ML. How do we get more insights out of this data, and how do we automate those things? The second big problem here is, when I'm a business person and I have a system I'm trying to drive my business off of, I don't just want to see the raw data. I want to see something that's actionable, something that gives me insights so I know what to do. One example here, when I was working as a contractor supporting the Centers for Disease Control, we did outbreak management. And it was a really cool part of my career because the code that I wrote 10 plus years ago now is still being used to fight COVID and all these other outbreaks. And part of what happened with the Ebola outbreak was the CDC deploys people overseas to help interview people who've been exposed. And they gather all this data and they run statistical algorithms against it to determine where is the outbreak spreading, how fast is it spreading, what are those risk factors, and how do they really just contain that outbreak. But with Ebola, it spread so quickly. It spread faster than other outbreaks that they've seen before. And they didn't have the power to kind of interview everybody, right? So if you say, like, for instance, on average, they could interview 300 people who've been exposed. But Ebola was spreading so fast, they really needed to interview 900 people. So being able to get the insights out of the data to say, okay, we have to risk profile who are the riskiest people that we need to interview and put as a priority, because we simply just don't have more people that have the right skill set to help contain this outbreak for that particular case. And you get these very impactful, change the world kind of use cases that need to be powered by data, but not just the raw data, but how do you get the insights so that you can help make the next best action. So as the world continues to kind of evolve and have people contribute more ideas into society, and how do we advance technology, but then also the technology will lead some business use cases, right? So you have 5G rolling out, we'll have 8K video. What can you do about, surveillance videos? And how do you get information off that? If I'm in a grocery store and I take a bottle of shampoo off the shelf, that video camera can zoom in and say, okay, I know exactly which brand it is. I can deduct this from the inventory management system because Chelsea just took this bottle of shampoo and put it in her cart. And then anybody who's doing online shopping can also be pulling from that same inventory management system. Great, but what happens when, like, my toddler runs down the hall of the grocery store with his hand and just like knocks all the bottles off the shelf? What happens then? And so it's kind of the balance of, yes, we can build these systems and we can power them off of data, but what do we need to do to make sure that these are realistic cases, that we're behaving ethically, and how do we make sure that we're including diverse viewpoints into these different solutions to make sure that there's all parts of the population or that are being represented are in these systems. And so when you think about, the number of IoT devices that are coming online, the way we're distributing this data worldwide. So no matter where I go in the world, I have very low local latencies, and I get that really rapid response from any of the apps that I'm using, to how we automate deployments and how we automate how we do our testing, how we generate synthetic data, how we do all these great things to be able to achieve great results. There's a lot of really exciting things coming ahead in the industry, and I'm really eager to help you guys build your tech careers to help be a part of it. So we look back for a second. The innovation has continued. The challenges that are ahead of us are going to continue to be very data focused, very data centric. But the context here is, we started in the 90s with client server. We evolved in the 2000s with web and what we called Web 2.0. In that time, we had these primary replica databases. You get a situation where the primary database goes down and there has to be a new election that happens to say who is going to be the new primary, and there's downtime that happens. And so with the invent of the iPhone in around 2007 and everybody being able to have a smartphone and a computer in their pocket at the time, being able to gather this data and make these decisions and expect that things are just always available. This consumer behavior drove a lot of the innovations that we see in tech today. And so when you think about smartwatches, you think about connected cars, all these different things are being fueled by these data architectures, and these data architectures have to be always available, always on, but they also need to be able to distribute data around the world. And so back in the early 2000s is when I started my tech career. I got an internship as a software engineer, and as I kind of continued through my career, being able to work with some really amazing teams and work on things like outbreak management, counter bioterrorism, being able to help small businesses up and get an online presence and grow their businesses, being able to work with some of the biggest Fortune 100 brands around how they modernize their data architectures and how do they engage with their customers. All these things have been so exciting. And so, today I just want to share a little bit about where I've been and what I see as useful, but also what I'm geeking out today, because, as the industry has evolved and as society has evolved, there's all these great new opportunities to engage. And for me, I'm the kind of person who likes variety. Like, I can't go to a job and have the same thing day in, day out. And so my career in tech has always been around how do we get that variety and get that engagement, be able to make a real difference in people's lives. So this is a sampling of the people that I work with through DataStax. A lot of big names, but I think the biggest piece here is these are all like really cool engineering teams. And so, there's a lot of focus on, okay, well, I want to go work for the biggest companies out there. Awesome, right? Each one of these groups has these really rich engineering teams that are solving interesting problems. And so, the way that we interact with these brands changes. And, if I go to McDonald's and I want to order a Happy Meal for my kid, on that app, that promotions thing, that's powered by DataStax. And the part about my job that I love is I'm able to help give guidance and help people deliver on these really big mission critical projects. I joke with people, like, I had an opportunity to go work and sell ad space many years ago. And I wasn't super excited about it. I wanted something that had a mission, something that I could have a real purpose in contributing to. And so my work here at DataStax, there's no shortage of opportunities like that. So a little bit about who DataStax is. So we're based in Santa Clara, California. And when we look at how important data is in all of our lives, there's a database called Apache Cassandra. And basically how DataStax started is we took that and we kind of wrapped this enterprise platform around it that had security, analytics, search, and graph around it. And our company has continued to evolve since then. And so now we've brought Cassandra to the cloud with Astra, DataStax Astra. We've brought it to Kubernetes with something we call Cassandra, and being able to make it easier, right? Because the number one thing when these big brands are building these really big systems, these big platforms, data is always the hardest part. And so, part of our mission is how do we make that really easy for people? And how do we make it easy for developers? So when we think about Apache Cassandra, it's a NoSQL database, and it gets this really high scale, high availability, and it's easy to scale it out to be able to increase your throughput. And so when you look at the big brands that are using it, it's not just the big brands that use it, but primarily when they use it, it's because they have this immense amount of volume, right? You take Netflix, for example. When Netflix first introduced the feature where they added the profiles, it used to be you logged into Netflix and it's just one profile for a family, right? And so when they added the profiles, the amount of data they took on their system just exploded, because now every profile had that same amount of metadata around it, and each household has, up to like 5 to 8 different accounts on there, and they couldn't have done that without a database that was really able to handle that kind of load. The other interesting thing about what Netflix did is when they rolled out to all these different countries, they were able to accelerate their timeline and roll out to roughly like 80 to 90 different countries in one weekend, right? And they're able to do that because of the linear scale that Cassandra provides for. And so to have that, not just like the tech cool part about, okay, great, you can handle like this incredible amount of data and data volume and all that, but it's also the agility that it gives these businesses. It's really cool. And so like really quick, I just wanted to kind of frame up more of like what we help with, right? And so when you think about these big brands, these are the type of situations that they're trying to solve for. So I've talked with a lot of students who are like, hey, I want to get an internship and I want to go to a big name company, right? But I'm a little concerned because if I go with a big name company, there's going to be red tape. There's going to be a lot of like mother may I, and I'll be moving really slow. But if I do an internship with a small company, I can move really fast and I have a lot of autonomy to do things. And so those are typical stereotypes for different companies. But one of the patterns that we do see in bigger brands is you kind of get this setup where you have the developers that are really limited to which APIs they can use and what frameworks they can use. There's a lot of heavy governance about how they build and what they build with. You also get on the operator side is they don't have a 360 view on these things. And so when you're building these distributed systems, having a 360 view from everything from development to operations is really important to understand the health of the system and how do you respond quickly with it. And then the third group here is with the owners, is how do they get that insight so they know how many people do we need to deploy to Sierra Leone to help fight Ebola, and they get that insight from the system to help drive things forward. And so with DataStax, our big mission here is hybrid database as a service, and this is really, really cool, and it's something that's really unique to who we are. When we look at hybrid, right, it's run on any cloud, every cloud, on-prem, both, all the above, doesn't matter, right? And so this is really great because when you get these big brands, they often do mergers and acquisitions, and they pick up other people that might have different cloud strategies and different providers that they work with. And so having this agility to kind of own your data and choose where it sits is really, really important. When you think about the database itself, it's not just about storing of data, but it's the developer access to that data and being able to choose these different API frameworks to work with, being able to have data being stored in different models where you're not having to ETL stuff around to make it all kind of same, but you're able to operate it on it and to view it in different views. And then serverless, being able to pay for what you use and nothing more. Remember the DataStax asterisk, because I'll come back to that in a second. But here, being able to have this as either managed or self-managed is important for our customers. And this allows them to have this ability to fit into their world. And so from a developer's point of view, Astra is amazing because all you need to do is spin up a database and you can just use APIs to call the data, and you can focus on building your application and not have to worry about installing and tuning and doing a bunch of the management kind of operations on the database itself. It's really great for people that are just starting and they're just learning a little bit about Cassandra, but they know more about APIs, or it's really great for people who are just beginning to use APIs and understand how do you manage the data access, how do I get the right data for my app. DataStax is bear hugging the community, right? And so this is with open source and kind of our roots with Apache Cassandra. Not only are we working with Apache Cassandra, but in the last year, we've open sourced a number of different developer tools and products for people to build with. And so Here's a short list of what some of them are. Stargate.io, we have a link in Discord for that, but this is something that is an open source community that's really this data API gateway. And how do you make sure that when you're building your app, you can abstract a lot of the complexity that might be living in the database side and be able to retrieve data very simply. When it comes to Kubernetes, we have the Kubernetes operator to work with Cassandra, but we also have additional tooling wrapped around repairs and some of these other activities that happen with Cassandra to really just make it easier for the developer to operate and build their apps. And typically when I engage with these people will say, Chelsea, what do you do? Like, you're a VP, like, what does that even mean, right? Helping these companies understand, what is their cloud journey that they're on? What is that data management plan that they have? And how do we make life simple for them? And so typically we'll run into big brands that are super big in open source, right? Great. How do we get them super successful with Apache Cassandra? We have folks that are saying, hey, like, I need a lot more on the enterprise security side of the house. I need more analytics and search capabilities. Great. We have DataStax Enterprise and Astra on that side. But most of the time it's picking from many of these. It's not just picking one of these. And so what we end up is something like this, is developers can use whatever frameworks they want to be able to build their apps. And that data, it goes through Stargate into the database. And the database itself stores data in a lot of different ways, right? And so having this simplicity of just grab and go your data and build with it, it's just something that's so beautiful, right? I mean, it's just such a simple way to be creative. And so when you think about hackathons like this weekend, I really encourage you to use Stargate and use Astra and go spin up something. Being able to create and innovate really quick is something that's really important for not just your career and how you build things, but it's important for how we kind of move society forward and how we continue to evolve and get lives easier for everybody. And so finally here, like the brands that we work with are just phenomenal, right? And they're doing so many different interesting things, everything from logistics and asset management of, how does Delta Airlines make sure that their crew that's assigned to your airplane is going to be there timely? And if something's wrong and they need to reschedule it, that they're doing so as quickly and as easily for their customers as possible. You look at like fraud detection. If I use my credit card here in Atlanta, and then there's a transaction of somebody buying a motorcycle in South Beach, like how do they know that that's not really Chelsea, right? And how do they flag it and prevent that? And when you look at kind of stitching together these architectures to really drive really fast decisions from the business, it really makes the business be able to adapt and adjust more easily. So let's talk about Astra. So we want Astra to become the database of choice for all developers. And it doesn't matter if you're building an application, if you're a backend engineer, building kind of big data platforms and apps that are on these platforms. It's something that is really simple and it abstracts away any of the complexities that might be living in the details of the database internals. So Astra is our database as a service. It's built on Apache Cassandra. We offer a free database, no credit card required, go spin it up. When the database spins up, you also get a REST API endpoint and a GraphQL API endpoint generated automatically. So it's simple, you don't need to install and configure anything, and you can get started really quickly. And so I'm gonna do a quick demo, and so I'm hoping the demo guides are friendly to me today. So this is Astra. And so I've logged in. This is my portal here. And click Add a Database. So here I want to spin up a free one. Let's put it on GCP and US East. And then let's say I'm a coffee shop. And so we're going to do DS Coffee. Let's say I do a promotion for customers here in the Atlanta area. Give a database name and password and create a database. And so what happens here is this is currently spinning up a database behind the scenes, but it's also creating those API endpoints. And so what's nice here is that we have these APIs that you can use, and we have the documentation here where you can understand, okay, well, how do I get started? What does this look like? And it really helps you with that first experience of how do you get in here and connect, right? And so we're seeing a lot of people use this for proof of concepts. We're seeing a lot of people use this for dev and test, but we're also seeing people run their businesses off of it in production. And so this is something that as you're looking at how do you build something this weekend or for a school project or whatever you have ahead of you, being able to have something that's free, easily accessible, and ready to go is really important. So here it's up and live, so we can say connect. And so here there's a number of different ways you can connect. So again, with the flexibility of choose what you want to choose. I'm going to choose REST. For those who haven't seen WSL with Windows and Linux, this is what I have set up on my world. So here it walks you through how to kind of set all this up. So you can highlight it there and copy it, or you can come over to this clipboard and copy it and paste it in here. So we set up our variables first, and then we need to get an auth token to make sure that we have the right permissions to actually call against this. So this is doing a post to my database to say, hey, this is Chelsea, give her a token that she can use. So we came back and it has this token here. So now we can come back here and we can say, okay, we've generated the token, it returned the token, and now let's set that token as a variable. Cool, so now it knows who we are. Those of you who are familiar with Swagger, this is set up for you to use when you generate the database initially. And then here you can create a table into your key space. So we come over here and copy this. We can say, okay, we want to post to our database the table name for the Rust example products, and it has the different configurations for that table in here. And so we just basically set up our first database, created a table for it. The documentation here walks you through adding more rows to it, you know, what else you can do, remove rows, etc. And there's a lot more help documentation that's absolutely fantastic. I'd highly recommend you check it out. So with that, let's get back to this. So when we talk about Stargate, you can think about it as just a layer that sits on top of the database between your application and the database. And it allows to do this transformation of data, right? So you can say, well, I'm going to write to the database in JSON, but maybe I want to pull it back out with GraphQL and get that flexibility. And it's something that, especially if you're working on different teams or you have different skill sets of different people that are building, like maybe it's one data platform, but you're building multiple applications off of it, that flexibility makes it really easy. And to have that data just in one place and not have to move it around saves time. So you have that faster response time with your app as well. And so here, when we think about the combination of Stargate and Astro together, you get that flexibility of being able to use the APIs that you want. And it's really quick to set it up. And you're only paying for what you use if you're not using the free tier. So why does this all matter, right? And so there's a number of companies that are really big and they have engineering cultures around open source. So as you set up your interviews, this is a great question to ask them is, you know, what is their open source strategy? Would you as an intern be contributing to open source? You know, what might that look like in your the day of the life of you as an intern. Here's just a sampling of the folks that are building open source cultures and are looking at, how they engage with Stargate as they're moving forward as new architectures. And the internship piece, this is something that is really important to me. And so this is something, as I started my career as an intern, I then moved into like intern manager where I was interviewing for interns. And then I ended up leading larger intern practices. And so two big things that come out of this is, yes, everybody goes in and says, yes, I want an internship because I want to learn stuff and I want to be able to get some good experience. But it's also important to realize, like, this is also a great opportunity to teach things. And so as an intern, you're bringing not just your technical skills with you, but you're bringing that point of view with you about, hey, why have we always done it this way? What if we do this, right? You might be pulling in new frameworks or new languages or new tooling to the development team. And so make sure as you step into your internships, you're bringing your voice and you're asking those questions, because that helps shape the culture of the team, but it also helps teach even most senior developers on the team new ways to think about things and new tooling to use. So I kind of boiled a bunch of this experience down to these 4 gems. The first one here is the numbers game. So apply to as many as you want, right? The more applications you get, the more interviews you'll get, the more interviews you get, the more offers you get. Track where you apply and make sure you do your research. One thing I screwed up on when I started doing my internship interviews when I was younger was I wouldn't research them. And then one company said, well, tell me what you know about us. And I thought to myself, like, that's crazy. Like, why would they ask me that? Like, that's, of course I'm here to go talk to, whatever big name it was. But they're not really testing to see what you know about them. They're really testing to see, like, how prepared are you for the interview and how do you do research? And one popular question a lot of people ask is, tell me something about my company that I don't know about, right? And that's an interesting one to respond to. And so part of it is understanding who they are and their role, but a lot of it is that company and the culture of that company. The second one here, open to exploring. Take tasks that you can own and drive. Take things that are outside your comfort zone. In my experience, I've grown the most when I have been uncomfortable at work and I'm picking up new skills and I'm practicing new skills and I'm failing a lot. And that's okay, as long as you learn from it and you move forward with it. The third one here is around hiring managers. So I've been a hiring manager for interns and for developers. And there's 3 big things here. It's the first one is when you show up for that interview, geek out, show yourself about how curious you are. Be proud of the things that are on your resume, these projects that you've done. Be able to talk about your role in those projects, not just what the project was about. Telling your story and being unique, right? So if I'm on the other side of the table and I'm interviewing 12 people that day, how at the end of the day do you make sure that you're memorable? I had one candidate years ago, she said, hey, like, I do battle bots, right? I don't just do software engineering. I actually like to build stuff and break stuff and fight other people's robots. And that was something I was like, okay, cool. Like, that's something that's unique for her. And it was something that was memorable, that stuck out in the interview. But everybody has their own thing that makes them unique, or things that they're curious about, or things they want to get into. So if you're interviewing somewhere and they have like a connected car use case, and that's an area you really want to get experience in, ask for it. And then as you finish that interview, make sure you have really interesting questions. This was an area that I didn't do so great on when I was starting my interviews. I thought it was rude to ask questions at the end. I didn't know any better. And then one of my coaches is like, Chelsea, like, this is your chance to really like ask them the tough questions, see what it is about the culture of where you're going, about what you'd be doing, and what kind of impact you have. Like, these are all really great things to explore more during these interviews. And then the fourth one here is just, you're a learning human being. When I was younger, this imposter syndrome thing maybe it was a thing, but I never let it get in my mindset. You get into this learning mindset and you just say, okay, I'm going to be continuing learning my entire career. And I'm going to be hands-on building things and then showing them off. And getting into this motion of building things, showing it off, asking questions, challenging assumptions. All these are great things to really accelerate your knowledge and understanding of an area, but also help you learn things well enough for you to teach it to others. when it comes to DataStax and our internship program, ours is really founded on our key values. It's really important as you're doing interviews to find a place that you feel you can contribute to and that you will benefit from for your career, but also who you are as a person. And so these four for DataStax, this is how we as a company kind of guide our culture and who we are and how we operate. So the first one here is be an owner. We want to make sure that we win together and we help our customers win. And really their success is our success. And so having interns that have a strong sense of ownership and driving things to close is really important. The second one here about obsessing over users and enterprises. This is, how do we really know what their challenges are and how we help them move forward? And so for the interns, how do we really make sure that they understand these real world scenarios and they're not just writing code in this like back corner of the room, right? They're here and they're contributing and they're interacting with our customers and they're engaged. The third one here, executing thoughtfully with speed. This isn't like move fast and break things. This is like, hey, be thoughtful about what we're doing, but let's move, right? We don't want to have a bunch of red tape. We want to be able to innovate and move and be able to collaborate with each other quickly. And the last one here about D&I, having many different viewpoints and having thoughtfulness about how we are including people and all their rich background of how they're building systems, what they're doing, how are our customers engaging with their customers, and how do we help make that better? We need a diverse team to be able to drive that forward. All right, so Sean, are you out there?
I'm right here, Chelsea.
Hello.
Hi. Hello, everyone. I am one of Chelsea's colleagues. I am here as an interviewer only. I'm just here to try and help facilitate a chat between Chelsea and myself to try and get some insight into her past and how Chelsea started on her journey as an intern and grew all the way up to a VP of DataStax. So let's just dive right into it, Chelsea, because I've known you for over 4 years now, exactly the length of time I've been with DataStax. So I've learned a lot about you over the past couple of years, but there's also a lot of key items that I've really admired about your journey. And I really like that we're going to be able to share that with everybody who's here today. So you started your studies at Georgia Tech, right? And from there, what was your first internship, and specifically, why did you choose that internship to pursue?
For sure. So when I started looking for internships, God, I must have applied for 20 different interviews. And I was just really bad at interviewing. I mean, it was just like super awkward. I had never done this before. Neither one of my parents are technical in any form of the fashion. I didn't really know anybody in the industry. And so when I was interviewing, I said, well, I felt kind of lost, honestly. I was like, well, I can do a lot of things. I love to solve problems. I love helping people. And I love writing code that does really cool stuff and showing it off. But like, how do I turn that into a job, right? So I took a job with a software engineering company here in Atlanta. It later got acquired by a larger company, but I chose going with a small company over a big company because I felt like I had more autonomy in that role and being able to meet the actual people in the interview process of who I'd be working with every day. And they were such dynamic personalities, and I just felt like I could learn a lot and I could contribute a lot into that role. And I chose for my internships to go back to that same company all the time. My husband studied computer science at Tech too, and he chose for his internships to change every semester was a different company because he wanted the variety in the different companies and the different contributions. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're looking for your internship paths as well.
Cool. So considering that you went back to the same company, what was it that you learned and what was your takeaway from your experience with them?
So part of it was every time I went back, it was a kind of different phase of the software development lifecycle. So I was able to kind of help move these projects forward no matter when I kind of jumped back in. part of why I went back so many times was I was helping use the money I earned during my internship to help pay for my college. But the learning piece around how to work as a team, how do we work with our customers, how that kind of technical consulting world worked, was just super fascinating to me. And I loved engaging with the people that we started off doing like database backed websites to help grow small, medium companies here in Atlanta. And then it ended up being working with applications in some larger companies. So if you guys have Dish Network and you see error messages, you can think of me because I helped do that many, many years ago.
That's excellent. So let's take a little jump in your career, right? So that was your start, your internship. Now, a couple of years later, you started to run internship programs. So what kind of experience did you want interns that are joining us today to walk away with? And what kind of experience did you want your interns that you were dealing with at the time to walk away with?
Well, I think it's really important that as students choose what internships they want to participate in, they understand how they can really use that program to further themselves. And this was always really hard for me because I'm the type of person that likes to help other people, and prioritize myself has always been a struggle. So when it came to the internship programs that I ran, it was how do we build creative programs where the interns are networking with each other as much as they're networking with other developers and other business leaders in the company. And so typically we'd have these challenges and these projects that they would work on in addition to customer facing things. But having that ability to create and be creative and really just make that real difference, right? When I was looking for my own internship, I'd heard these horror stories of people who were like, oh yeah, I got hired as an intern and then they just wanted me to code this one thing and it took me like a week and then I had the rest of the summer and I didn't have anything else to do, right? And so having a meaningful engagement in internship programs is really important.
Wonderful. All right, so you kind of name dropped the CDC earlier. From knowing you personally, I also know that you have worked at Booz Allen. Those are kind of big names. What brought you to DataStax, a startup?
It's an interesting story. So part of my role at Booz Allen was I had to bring in the technical vendors for like a weekly lunch and learn type thing. So I reached out to one of my colleagues who was working at DataStax and said, hey, would you be able to do a lunch and learn with us about Apache Cassandra? He's like, sure, I'd absolutely love to. So he's given this presentation. He talks about how it's 100% uptime, right? And I'm like the heckler in the room. And I was like, come on, 100% uptime? Like, you probably mean like 5 nines. And he's like, no, 100%. Like, this is how it works, right? And I was just so dumbfounded because I had just spent 9 months working for the government getting SQL Server to be highly available. And it was a pain, right? And it was tedious and it was not the most glamorous part of my career, right? And to see it out of the box, I was just like, wow, this is amazing technology. I want to like dive in and learn more, right? And so I did, and the opportunity opened up here at DataStax to lead our elite architecture team. And the idea of being able to lead some of the best and brightest was just something that was very attractive to me. And so being able to jump into exciting technology with exciting people, it was just a really good match.
Awesome. So you already mentioned diving in yourself. So let's dive in a little bit further in your career yet again. So now that you've been with DataStax for a while, could you share some of the lessons that you learned on your journey to becoming a VP when you started as an intern?
Definitely. And I think one of the things about being in engineering leadership is that I've seen kind of maybe 2 patterns of engineering leadership. And it's the people that are really wanting to like geek out about the tech and they're very tech centered. And then you have the engineering leaders that are very people centered. And so I fall into the people centered engineering leadership bucket. And what I mean by that is I've had many opportunities in my career to help other people's career and coach them to grow. And it's more than just the tech skills, right? Because yes, the tech skills are primary and they're absolutely needed to help create things. But those business skills coupled with those tech skills is what really makes them amazing engineers. And it doesn't mean that in order for people to advance in their career, they have to be like an engineering manager. You can be a fantastic senior level engineer that is able to influence people and able to do design and be able to get buy-in from stakeholders. And having people be better off in their careers because I help them in a small way move forward is really meaningful to me. But it's also the bar I set for people that are looking at promotions, right? I have a rule of, if you're an engineer that wants to have a promotion, I want to know 3 engineers that are better off because of you and why. And I think that's the pay it forward. How do we all help each other grow? Because that's when we have the most fun together.
Yeah. Personally, I can attest to that because when I just came on board, you were one of the few people that really, really invested time in me. So thank you for that very much. And thank you for the fireside chat. Please feel free to continue. Everybody else, it was a pleasure being here today. I am still around for questions, and thank you for joining in.
Thanks, Sean. So to leave you guys with another technique, because I'm very much focused on how do I give you guys tools to put in your toolbox for you guys to be successful. This is something one of my career coaches taught me. And so the idea here is that you have a chart on the x-axis. You say, hey, I'm going to become more technical. I'm going to grow my technical skills. On the y-axis is leadership. And my coach said, hey, listen, every year, be thoughtful about which direction you want to move this year. Do you want to become more technical? Do you want to focus on your leadership? Or for the really tough years that you feel like you have a lot of energy, go for both at the same time, right? And so it really stuck with me because there's a lot of different valid career paths here, right? A lot of people stay along the bottom and just say, I just want to get super, super technical. And the more years I'm in my career, I want to continue to learn and continue to help people understand how to make things real with tech, right? For me, this is my path. Spot 1 here was, hey, I was an intern, learning as much as I can, contributing as much as I can. The second spot here was me being a senior developer and being able to help mentor other interns and other developers. The X's on this line are when I changed companies. So when I left the startup and I joined Lockheed Martin, that's where I did the work with fighting H1N1. And so I led the technical response for an open source tool called EpiInfo. And that was 2 really, really hard years because I had to learn technical leadership. I learned agile development. I learned more about open source contributing. And we were fighting a pandemic. And we were building the software as the pandemic evolved. It was a lot of fun, but it was also a lot of stress and a lot of growth. And then when I left, I left Lockheed to go to Booz because I had an opportunity to lead a larger team. And so I learned here that I love helping a lot of concurrent teams. So at Lockheed, it was 1 project at a time. When I went to Booz, we had about 15 concurrent projects, all agile development shop, doing modernization for the Centers for Disease Control mainly. And so this type of work, which is really exhilarating because I learned more about leading other leaders. And I learned more about how do you do these massive modernization efforts at scale. And so then when I joined DataStax and I had the opportunity to lead this bright engineering team, the challenge I had was, great, now we need to do this at multiple customers at the same time. And how do we make sure we're moving thoughtfully with speed? And so as you kind of go through your career, you'll have your own path, but I encourage you to find the things that you love and do more of those things. And as you kind of learn more about yourself, you'll discover more areas for you to explore. As we kind of close out here, when we talk about these big mission critical, interesting things, the New York Stock Exchange uses DataStax Enterprise to power every single stock tick change that happens throughout the trading day. And so this is a big deal because it's a few terabytes of data every day, and they need that always on experience. But it also allows them to get some real-time analytics and some search capabilities around different like pricing trends and projected pricing and all of that. And so this one's a great story of just the scale and of the types of problems that we solve. And so as you kind of look forward to your internships and where you go with your technical career, there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of contribute and have cool things associated with you. And so here, looking at Dell, is they get data from every single device and product that they have. but how do they turn that data into something that's useful? And so being able to operate at a scale to say, hey, we have about 3 terabytes of data a day in millions and millions of health checks. How do we make sure that our customers can stay online and be successful? Again, just these really big scale situations. To finish it up here about hackathons. So Major League Hacking is doing a session later that's doing a deeper dive into Astra Stargate. But one of the things that I had when my first hackathon I participated in was around how we take non-hackers and come and participate in a hackathon. And so when you look at how you're working with people this weekend and how you continue to keep these relationships and you meet new people this weekend, innovation is spawned by a lot of different things. So we had a hackathon at the CDC that was a Halloween hackathon, and this is where I get one of my claims to fame is the mother of open data at CDC. So we had this hackathon and I failed miserably. It was like one of the biggest public fails I think I've done in my career. And my goal was for that hackathon is I wanted to use some open data sets that CDC had to build something of interest and be able to open that up to the world. And the CDC has a vast amount of data from all different types of things. And so we start the hackathon, and I'm networking with people there, and I'm trying to say, well, who owns these different data sets within the agency? And, where do I go and find more information about it? And it was a struggle. Like, there's data like everywhere, but they're all in their little silos. And it was really hard to find something and then understand, okay, well, this is a really old like SOAP API. How do I use this? And where's the docs for this? And how do I be creative here? And you fast forward to the end of the day, and I was like, wow, like I don't really have that much to show. I kept what I call a stream of consciousness doc to say, okay, I found this data set. Here's where it is. Here's how I called the data out. This and this, and I had that going. But really, it was like I had nothing to show at the end of the day because all I had was a bunch of research I'd done about data, right? But I actually had more than that. And what I had was this need of, hey, if I'm a developer and I want to build something with CDC data, this is a pain to find all the data. And I was a contractor at CDC at the time. So it was easier for me to do than a public citizen to do. And so, but I got pushback of like, hey, who's going to own this data, right? All these different data sets have different business stewards and technical stewards. And, politically, it's going to be hard to kind of pull all those together to have one central hub for open data for CDC. And I said, well, I understand there's going to be challenges here, but having this simple experience for developers can help drive more innovation. And so I think it was like soon after I had left CDC is when they launched formally the data.cdc.gov portal. But I think when I look back at that experience, I'll challenge each of you to say, even if things don't work out the way you expect, really great things can happen from it. And so just, be able to have that adaptability and that flexibility is super important. Another one I'll tell you about was it's really kind of morbid, but again, with public health data, it's a cause of death application. And so we had a project at a hackathon and some business folks that were like, hey, we have this problem. Population data drives a lot of policy, right? So you say, oh, you have a representative for every X many citizens, or you get X amount of dollars for every Y number of citizens. And to know how many citizens, you need to know the birth records and the death records. And the challenge was that if I'm a doctor at a hospital, I need to be able to enter that information in when somebody codes so that I can track, okay, well, how did this person die? What were the cause of death? And then at an aggregate level, we can make policies to help improve people's lifespans and the like. Well, at the end of that hackathon, we had about 8 hours to do something, and we were able to put together a V1 of an app because at the time, they just didn't have any way for doctors to be able to quickly enter this information. And the business owner at the end of it came up to us and said, Chelsea, like, we thought this was going to be like an 18-month project to put this together. What you guys put together in 8 hours totally blows our mind. This is exactly what we need, and we need this more, to go forward. And so again, it's thinking about what do you bring to the table? What are those new tools? What are that new technology that you can move faster? And how do you work with people that are in your group that might not have the programming skills that you might have, but they have that business knowledge and that need pretty outlined and you can learn from. So here's 2 sites here to get involved. Major League Hacking helped with the Code for Atlanta cause of death hackathon I just talked about. Absolutely fantastic organization. And then as you put these on your resume, please put them on your resume. 1, highlight your creativity with this and talk about what that real impact is. A lot of people spend time doing hackathons and then they just kind of discard them. And these are really interesting things to talk about during interviews. So to close it out here, thank you for having me speak here today. I hope you're able to take away a few new techniques about how to build your career, how to be able to use hackathons to help further new opportunities for yourself. Have fun this weekend, build, get to know people. You know, after this event's over, keep in contact with people. Put yourself outside of that comfort zone so you can grow the fastest. Go sign up for an Astra account and build something cool. Let me know what you build. I'd love to see it. If you're interested in DataStax, Astra, Stargate, any of these things, you know, you can apply for our internship program or full-time job. We have a great developer relations group here to kind of get involved with. And, you know, anything that we can do to help you with your careers, please let us know. And thank you. So here to kind of close it out, I'm going to have some 30-minute sessions. If you want to do like mock interviews or me to look at your resume, we'll put that link in Discord. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter. If I know somebody at a company that I can help introduce you to, I'm more than happy to do that as well. All right, and so in my Southern woman nature, I talked everybody's ear off sufficiently, but I do think we have some time for some questions.
I think we are good. Milan did a great job of keeping everybody updated as we progress through everything. I think
Awesome.
Reem actually said thank you for the event, and I believe our listeners have also started to log off as we can hear. So thank you, everyone. We love being here. Have a happy hackathon and make something important.
Have fun, y'all.
Everybody.
All right, bye.
Bye.